You know, every major movement has an origin story. But what if one of the most influential messages in human history didn't start with a big public announcement, but with, like, a secret whispered between a few trusted friends? That's exactly what we're digging into today. The very beginning of the Islamic call in 7th century Arabia. And you'll see how starting in secret wasn't just a random detail. No, it was an absolutely crucial strategy.
All right, so we're going to break this down into 4 parts. First, we'll get the big picture of the Prophet's mission. Then, we'll get into the why behind that 3-year secret. After that, we'll meet the very first people to join up. And finally, we'll see how that secret eventually started to get out.
All right, let's get into it. To really understand why starting in secret was so important, you gotta look at the whole picture first. The Prophet's entire mission is basically broken down into 2 main phases. So you've got the Meccan phase, which went on for about 13 years, and then you have the Madanese phase, which lasted for a solid 10 years. And believe me, each one of these periods had its own totally unique vibe and its own set of challenges. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. That Meccan phase, it's broken down even further into 3 stages. And for what we're talking about today, we are laser focused on that very first one, the secret beginning. So this brings us right to the heart of our story today, the secret stage. And the big question is, why? I mean, why not just shout this incredible message from the rooftops from day one? Well, it all came down to strategy and understanding the time and place he was in. And look, this wasn't just a quick, cautious move. We're talking about 3 full years where the call was kept completely secret. I mean, that tells you this was a very deliberate, very careful strategy. Start small, grow the inner circle, and build a community, all of it happening completely under the radar. So what was the big reason for all this secrecy? Well, it boils down to one word: Mecca. See, this wasn't just any town. It was the religious and economic hub of all of Arabia. It had the Kaaba, and it was filled with the idols that all the tribes came to worship. It was, without a doubt, the capital of idolatry. There's a quote from our source material that just puts the challenge perfectly. It describes trying to bring this message of pure monotheism to Mecca as trying to hit a target of reform inside a den of idolatry. I mean, just think about that imagery. The risk of getting shut down hard and fast was just incredibly high. And that's why this clandestine call, this secret approach, was so absolutely necessary. The whole idea was to share the message person to person, one-on-one, and build a solid foundation of believers before even thinking about a public showdown with the powerful leaders of Mecca, the Quraysh. Of course, a secret call is only as good as the people who answer it, right? So who were these first individuals? Who were the ones that formed the very first wave of this new faith, knowing full well that they were risking everything? Well, as you'd probably expect, the mission started right at home. The Prophet began with the people he knew best and trusted the most. This wasn't a message for the marketplace. Not yet. It started inside his own home, with his closest family and friends. So the very first people to respond were his absolute inner circle. You have his wife Khadija, his freed slave Zayd bin Haritha, his young cousin Ali bin Abi Talib, who was actually living with him, and of course his best friend Abu Bakr. See, the entire foundation was built on deep, personal trust. And let's talk about Abu Bakr for a second, because he was absolutely pivotal. The source material calls him an energetic and most zealous activist, and that's from day one. He was well off, highly respected, known for being a wise and gentle person, all of which made him an incredibly effective and trusted voice for this new message. And it was really through Abu Bakr's efforts that the circle started to expand. You had key figures like Uthman bin Affan, Zubair bin Awam, and Saad bin Abi Waqqas come on board. I mean, these are names that would become giants in the community later on. It's just a perfect example of how the message spread naturally, through people who already knew and trusted each other. So, okay, how big did the secret community actually get? Well, according to the famous biographer Ibn Hisham, by the end of those 3 years, there were more than 40 people. Just think about that, from 4 people to over 40, and all of it was done in secret. And this was way more than just a list of individuals. It was a real functioning community. They would meet up secretly out in the mountain valleys around Mecca so they could learn about the new revelations and pray together.
Actually, it was during this super early period that the ritual prayer, the Salat, was first established. But here's the thing, a secret this big can't stay a secret forever, right? And that brings us to our last part. What happened when the whispers got too loud to ignore, and how the powerful people in Makkah started to see this new movement in a very different light. Yep, despite all the precautions, word eventually started to leak out across Mecca. You have to remember, this was a pretty close-knit city. News of this secret, growing group started to spread, moving out of private chats and into the general buzz of the city. And this is where you can really see the shift and how the leaders of Quraysh felt about it. At first, they kind of just blew it off, thinking of the prophet as just another religious philosopher, like other thinkers they'd heard of. But once that community grew to more than 40 people, that casual attitude turned into real apprehension. They started watching his every move, and you can bet they were getting anxious. So after 3 years of building this foundation completely underground, the mission had hit a critical point. The time for being secret was coming to an end. A new revelation was on its way, one that would order the prophet to take the message public, and that was going to change everything. So it all leaves us with this one powerful question. For 3 years, this call grew entirely in the shadows. A tight-knit, resilient community was built on trust and quiet faith. So what happens when that quiet faith is commanded to step out into the light and declare itself, right in the heart of that den of idolatry? What happens next?